Hello, I'm Jacqueline Gelineau, and I'm joined here today with Blair Visscher, who is the candidate for the Green Party of Canada for Vernon-Lake Country-Monashee. Now, Blair, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm really curious why you decided to run in this election.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I decided to run in this election because, firstly, I really believe in the policies of the Green Party, and also because it's such a fraught time right now. There's so much going on south of the border. There's also so much going on here in Canada. People are feeling a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and it felt like a time when what we really need is change. And I've been a member of the Green Party for many years. I've been the CEO of the board for Vernon-Lake Country-Monashee for a year, and everything just really aligned to decide to stand up for the planet, for Canadians, and for Vernon-Lake Country-Monashee right now.
In this election, a lot of the key talking points are coming out of Ottawa. They're coming out of, Ontario, East Canada. And I'm really curious, what key problems and what key concerns are, central to your riding, and what is your platform that you're going to be advocating for?
Yeah, absolutely. We can't afford anything. So I'm raising a family in Lumbee. I work in Vernon, and the cost of living, month over month, is continuing to rise. Every day, Canadians are feeling pinched every which way. And so for me, that's the main thing that we need to focus on. Nobody is going to be able to focus on anything else if we can't afford groceries, if we can't afford housing. So the Green Party has a really coherent and robust policy plan to affect us right away. So the idea is to cut federal income tax for people making $40,000 or less. Right now, you wouldn't pay federal income tax if you're making $15,000 or less about. So that's a significant increase. So the hardest hit Canadians would feel an easing of pressure immediately. And we also have affordable housing policy to stop corporations from jacking up the cost of housing for their own profit, and to actually support people to have access to housing as soon as possible. I think that's the main thing.
Mm-hmm. Earlier you mentioned what's going on south of the border. I think a really key talking point right now are the tariffs. Mm-hmm. How, if elected, would you advocate for producers, the local economy in your riding in light of the tariffs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our area we really do rely on trade. So it's a really challenging time for small business owners, for farmers, and for those of us who buy those things, right? So I think that in order to address the tariffs, one, we can't allow ourselves to be bullied. Donald Trump's acting as if he's kind of like a mob boss, and that's not really how country relations work. So I think that we need to continue to stand up for ourselves. The Green Party has suggested that we invest in Canadian resources so that the federal government would be purchasing resources and sort of stockpiling so that people are not losing their jobs and losing out on income that they count on, and so that when prices are high again, we have stock to sell. So in that way we can protect our small businesses and our farmers, and support Canadian growth.
Mm-hmm. So a key concern for a lot of voters is the fear of splitting the vote, and there's a lot of narrative of voting right or left, but Canada isn't a two-party system. What do you have to say about concerns of splitting the vote?
Yeah, I think this is what I've heard the most from voters in Vernon-Lake Country-Monashee, and I have a few thoughts on it. First, like you said, Canada's not a two-party system, and if we keep just vacillating between two parties because we're always afraid to vote our values, we are going to keep looking like we are a two-party system. I think it's deeply undemocratic. However, I understand the fear of not wanting people that you feel are really dangerous to get into power. And I would just say that the vote that we're talking about splitting in Vernon-Lake Country-Monashee is about 30%. So most people are not voting. Last federal election, 30% of people came out to vote. About 15% of that voted Conservative. So really, I think rather than talking about voting strategically and really going away from what we want to see as Canadians, what we need to talk about is the power in a vote. So everybody who's not engaged, who feels like, what does it even matter? It's pre-decided. I would say to you, you're not recognizing your own power and your own voice. If even 60% of our riding turned out to vote, I think it would look very different. And if we all came out and voted for what we actually want to see in Canada, as opposed to what we're afraid of, so we're going to take a lesser evil just so the worst thing won't happen, no one will be happy. But if we all come out and we say, this is what we want, this is important, and we know that our vote matters, I think we'll see an incredibly different political landscape. And I think we're ready for that. Nobody has been happy with what has happened over the past number of years. And everyone is afraid for the future. And so I would speak to all those people who have never voted or who maybe have been voting and have felt, what is the point? And say right now is our opportunity to really change Canada for the better and to create the Canada that we want to see.
There is a balance between resource extraction. The Conservatives have said that they want to remove barriers to resource extraction. Other parties, like the Green Party, want to make sure that's done very differently. How are you going to balance that with bolstering our economy? I think it's no secret that the more resource extraction has, the more our GDP can grow. How do you balance those two needs?
Yeah, for sure. Well, rampant resource extraction, or what Pierre Poilievre's latest idea is to just sell parts of Canada to American business owners with pre-approved permits, so a permit that means nothing, and with no Indigenous consultation, which is illegal, with the idea that it will create growth. But growth for whom, right? It will put money into the pockets of large corporations while everyday Canadians have to accept all of the consequences of our country being exploited and dealing with pollution, and then the ongoing effects of climate change, which we all have to bear the brunt of. We're the ones who are breathing smoke every year. We're the ones who have to evacuate our homes. It's not the big corporations who are having to deal with that under that plan. So yes, Canadian resources are a very important part of our economy, but we do need to have Indigenous consultation, we do need to have correct permitting, and we do need to invest in cleaner technologies. Rampant exploitation of our resources is not a long-term solution. It's a short-term solution to make a very small group wealthy while the rest of us struggle.
Mm-hmm. So it's, according to the most recent polling numbers, it's unlikely that the Green Party is going to win this election. So if your party is not in power, in government, what would you do as an elected official to make sure you're still advocating for the community?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the Green Party has shown that with very few members, we can affect a lot of change. One of the things that the Green Party has that no other party does is we don't make our MPs vote along party lines. So we have a lot of ability to make sure we're doing what our constituents actually want, as opposed to just being a cog in a bigger party and not really having any voice and having to vote with party lines regardless of what the constituents want. So that's one thing that I think is really key. And I think that the Greens need to be in Parliament in some capacity, because otherwise we just have these two big parties really running the entire narrative, and there need to be checks and balances in place.
Mm-hmm. What would a Green Party elected official, what do they bring that isn't seen in those two big parties, in the Liberals and the Conservatives?
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, for Vernon-Lake Country-Monashee, if, say, a Conservative or a Liberal or even an NDP gets elected, they're part of a larger body of people. And as you've said, the Ottawa narrative really takes over, the Eastern Canada narrative really takes over. And so when you're just one MP in a group of over 100 and you have to vote along party lines and you're not in cabinet, you have very little ability to actually advocate for the people of your riding. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Green Party is able to really hold other people to account, and our vote can go to whatever our constituents want us to vote for. We're not stuck doing whatever the party says and kind of jumping when they say jump. And in the situation of a minority government, that's where the Greens really hold the balance of power. So, getting to make sure that what we want with our policies for affordable housing, our policies for fair taxation, are part of the conversation. In a way, I think that an MP coming from this area to a bigger party is not able to do.
Mm-hmm. So we live in a beautiful area. Your riding is expansive and gorgeous. What are some of your favorite parts of your riding that keep you in Lumbee? What is it that really
so it really is my favorite place. Whenever I think of traveling, I always end up saying, but I'm already in the best place. I grew up in the Kootenays. I lived in Vernon for 5 years. I live in Lumbee now because I love rural, small town Canada. But I work in Vernon, and I'm doing my graduate research in Lake Country, so I get to see a large amount of this incredible place all the time. I love the lakes. I love with my kids in the summer just deciding which lake will we go to today. And, they're all 10 or 20 minutes away. It's an incredible privilege. And I think with that privilege comes a responsibility to take care of this beautiful place that we get to be in. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And now, final question. You mentioned the lakes. We do have a mythical creature that may be living in our Lake Okanagan. Have you ever had an experience with the Ogopogo?
I've never had an experience with the Ogopogo, but when I was a young child, I remember driving across the bridge, the floating bridge in Kelowna, and saying that I saw the Ogopogo because I really wanted to see it. So I didn't actually, but I like to think maybe I felt it that day.
Yeah, you felt the spirit of it. No, I love that. Okay, thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciated the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks so much.